really excited to bring in our guest, an editor at the American Prospect. He's an extremely hardworking, prolific journalist, author. Welcome, David.
Hey.
How are you?
How you doing? Good.
Yo. Whew, thanks for bearing with us.
You got it.
It's great to have you back. You're one of those guests who, like, the second if I book you, then I have to read like 12 articles between booking you and you coming on because you write a lot. But you are definitely like probably one of the, best people to talk about this stimulus mishigas, if you will. And so could you tell people just what has happened basically over the past, I guess, 48 hours?
Well, sure, especially because I know the word mishigas,
yes,
being a member of the tribe.
MOT, yeah.
Makes it very easy for me to for us to communicate.
Yeah.
Let's go back to March. There was a bill called the CARES Act. It had a lot of significant measures for individuals, for small businesses. It also had a big fat amount of money for corporations. And because it effectively bailed out the corporate sector, that was the last we heard of stimulus for many, many months. And predictably, the CARES Act was kind of designed to last until July. And July came and went, and we still had the pandemic. And for months, Democrats were trying to essentially roll back the mistake they made of making the individual relief temporary while the permanent bailout of corporations went on. So we had months and months of this discussion. The election came and went. There were these kind of fake negotiations between Trump and Pelosi. Mitch McConnell wasn't involved in them at all because he really didn't want to produce anything. He kind of was certain that Biden was going to win the election, didn't want to really give him a boost going into his presidency. So what changes after the election is you get this situation where the control of the Senate comes down to two races in Georgia. And McConnell goes and tells his caucus, Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue, who are the Republican incumbents, are getting hammered in Georgia because there's no relief for people. They're getting blamed. We got to do something about it. So finally, he comes out of his cocoon and he starts negotiating. So literally, Mitch McConnell, since March, had nothing to do with any kind of COVID relief negotiation until December. So for 9 months, he was not involved. And it really wasn't even worth thinking about until he got involved. And he finally did. And they passed a bill, $900 billion bill, which was kind of the least that McConnell could get away with, right? It extends unemployment for only 11 weeks. So it gets us to March when we're not going to be in a position with the vaccine to be back to normal. It has a one-time $600 stimulus payment, which is $600, half of what was before, and not really sufficient to do much of anything with. It has small business relief, but the individual stuff is a little underweight. It does not have state and local government aid, which is really going to trigger a lot of austerity. Places like where I live, Los Angeles and New York, and city employees who are going to be out of work because they have massive shortfalls in their budgets, and there's no federal money coming in to offset those. It's a little bit underweight on the vaccine, like getting, right now, the #1 economic thing holding us back is the fact we have this pandemic still going on. So you want to plow as much money into, reducing the timeline of when everybody can get vaccinated. And there's more money could be put to that purpose. So it's kind of the least that McConnell could get away with. He could give this to his folks in Georgia and have them say, look, I gave you relief for the American people at last, vote for me. And McConnell would then retain the Senate and be able to sort of block any kind of attempts by the Democrats under a Biden presidency to give further relief. So that was the best laid plan, a 9-month plan by Mitch McConnell to sort of control the narrative, control what's happening around the economy. Then a day ago, Donald Trump, who is not really involved in this most recent negotiation at all, like since the election, obviously he's concerned with, you know, engaging in a putsch or something. He's concerned with overturning the election.
Democracy.
Yeah, exactly. So someone tells him, I guess, about this bill, and he does a Twitter video. And the thing he says, he says two things on the video. Number one, there's all this wasteful spending in the COVID relief bill. The truth is that to the extent there's wasteful spending, it's because they attached the COVID relief bill to the federal spending for the rest of the year. All of the things that he's complaining about are in the budget for the rest of the year, much of which was in his budget that he gave to Congress. And now he's complaining about these out of context things that really have nothing to do with the COVID relief package, which was just sort of attached to the spending bill. But he says, yeah, there's this and that, and it's all ridiculous stuff. It's not really ridiculous stuff. It's a small amount of money. He named 14 programs. It would have cost about $3 billion. This is a $2 trillion package, not a lot of money. And then what he says is that the $600 checks are ridiculously low. And there he has certainly a point, right? And what he says is that I am not signing this bill until there are $2,000 checks. And then he also says, you know, you got to get rid of this wasteful spending, but he doesn't really specify. So all of a sudden, this is like a stink bomb that gets dropped into these negotiations because Donald Trump, he never said the word veto, but he didn't say he would sign it either. And we're so close to the end of Congress that he could obliterate this bill, kill the bill by just not signing it and just run out the clock. And then there's no bill and they got to start over at the beginning of the next Congress. And nobody really wants that, especially the unemployed. There are 2 expiring unemployment programs. They expire the day after Christmas, and 12 million people are on them. And they would end up having no visible means of support at that point. So it's crucially important that this something gets done. But he wants $2,000. So, I'm looking at this. This was yesterday at 8 o'clock Eastern. He drops this video. And I'm thinking, well, the first thing that the House of Representatives should do is say, here's a 1-page bill on the floor that crosses out 600 and puts in 2,000, just like Trump wants. And lo and behold, showing that political instinct is not completely dead in the Democratic Party, Nancy Pelosi comes out about 10 minutes after I wrote that on Twitter saying the same thing. Did
you DM her by accident or text her by accident?
I did not butt dial Nancy Pelosi, no.
Yeah.
So, she says, look, I'm all for it. We'll put the bill on the floor. We can get this done immediately. Now, what she said is that, and this is going to happen tomorrow, they're going to go in and offer, I have to now explain 2 arcane bits of congressional procedure. So there's a thing called a pro forma session. And all that means is that instead of recessing Congress, so, the president can make mischief and do recess appointments and things like that, what they do, and this has been done since the Obama years, is somebody walks in, they gavel in, they say the Senate will come to session, House will come to session, and then they gavel out and then they walk out. That's a pro forma session, right? So what they're going to do tomorrow is the person's going to come in, gavel in, somebody on the floor is going to say, I ask unanimous consent to pass this 1-page bill increasing the checks to $2,000. And so unanimous consent, what does that mean? That means that everyone has to agree with that. And what it really means is that nobody has to object. So if they go on the floor and say, I have this bill, I ask unanimous consent that it become, that it be passed by the House, and no one objects, then the bill is passed. Now, House Republicans have said, we're not going to let that happen. So they're defying Trump. Trump has said, I want $2,000. Some House Republican is going to walk into the chamber tomorrow and say, I object. I do not give unanimous consent to do this. So at that point, Nancy Pelosi will have a choice to make. She can come back and actually put the bill on the floor to a vote, and she has the numbers in the House, and she should be able to pass that. And then it would go to the Senate and and then Mitch McConnell is in this terrible, terrible position. He will have a bill passed by the House that Trump supports, that the House has passed, that Chuck Schumer has said he supports it, increasing these checks to $2,000. And he's got these races in Georgia that are, the Ossoff and Warnock, they're only talking about $2,000 in the last 24 hours. This puts Mitch McConnell in a terrible position because this is not something he wants to do. But, he's now defying Trump. And, there's animosity there because he actually said, congratulations to President-elect Biden. Right. And so what is he going to do at that point? Like, this is a classic move. Now, it's hilarious that Trump waits until after he loses the election to engage in populism to wedge the two parties. But, he's now put McConnell in a really tough spot. And I think he's put Pelosi in a tough spot now, because Pelosi would have been happy to say, I asked unanimous consent. Oh, they objected. See, the Republicans are blocking you from $2,000, which is all true. But right. She could go one step further and actually put the bill on the floor. And it turns out the House is going to be in session on Monday. And the reason they're going to be in session is another thing Trump did. I'm sorry, I'm going on forever.
This is stuff what is it? It's like, basically it's stuff that nobody knows and is either too embarrassed to ask, or we don't even know what to ask about. Yeah. Okay.
So another thing Trump did just today is he vetoed what is called the National Defense Authorization Act, the defense policy bill. And that has broad bipartisan support, whether you like it or not, it does. And so the House is going to come into session on Monday, and the Senate on Monday, to override that veto. Nancy Pelosi has already scheduled this. She says, we're coming in, which means now there's really no reason not to put the checks bill on the floor, right? Because they're going to be there. They're going to be in Washington voting on Monday. So if this gambit with the Christmas Eve gambit to pass it by unanimous consent doesn't work, which it won't, they can come in on Monday, pass the bill. The Senate can, Chuck Schumer can ask unanimous consent, much like in the House, that this bill be taken up. McConnell will object. And, or maybe McConnell won't object because he's in this terrible position where he has to deliver for the two senators in Georgia. So that's what's happening right now. Those are the stakes right now. Politically, this is gold for the Democrats. From a policy standpoint, we'll see how far they're willing to go. I think they should push this to the absolute limit. Are we going to get $2,000 checks out of this instead of $600? I don't know. It really depends on whether Republicans, are pushed into it by Trump. But it's worth playing it out because politically it is an absolute win for the Democrats to continue to push this.
Someone wrote in the comments that the Senate is more important for McConnell. I guess the implication being that he will actually do that. I mean, what not to do the unthinkable, but what do you think will happen?
I mean, I think it's a genuine jump ball, and you don't get a lot of those in politics. Like, on the one hand, he'd rather have the Senate. If you're saying he'd rather have the Senate, what you're saying is he's going to allow these checks to go through. Now, this would cost probably $400 billion extra to up these checks from $600 to $2,000 each. So, I mean, look how much they've already spent. What's another 400 billion, right? So, on that sense, maybe McConnell wants to do it. But, you know, what was his strategy for 9 months? Do the least bit possible and keep Joe Biden and his economy, which will be his economy immediately on January 21st, right? Keep his economy as struggling as humanly possible, while also he's trying to thread a needle where he helps the folks in Georgia while also trying to keep the economy kind of suppressed and not deliver any kind of fiscal help to them. So, you know, this would not thread the needle. You give $2,000 to every person. I mean, it's a one-time thing. It won't solve every problem, but it wouldn't be bad, right? And you know, I see it as this 2,000, the other 1,200. This is like the beginning of payback for decades of inequality that suppressed wages for the working class for like 40 years, right? And finally, we have something where, you know, and it's entirely because of the pandemic, where working people are getting a cash benefit, and it only goes to people making under $100,000, and actually starts to phase out at $75,000. And it levels the scales, not completely, obviously, but to a small degree. It's a beginning of a down payment on that, and also gets people thinking about, hey, the welfare state could actually work out if you know, we had a monthly stipend, or if we had a UBI, or, you know, it gets you thinking about that stuff. So these are things McConnell definitely doesn't want to do, right? He doesn't want to throw that into the mix. He's willing to do the bare minimum possible, but he doesn't want to go much further than that. He doesn't want Biden to have a good kickoff to the economy. And so he's conflicted. You know, obviously, House Republicans are saying they're not going to give unanimous consent. So there obviously is trepidation here. But I think if the House passes a bill on Monday, and McConnell has to figure this out, it's a genuine jump ball. Now, there are two other things to keep in mind here. Number one is what I said before about unemployment programs expiring on Saturday. And so if Trump doesn't sign this bill, those programs are going to expire. And it's unclear, will people be able to get retroactive unemployment benefits? Will they have to reapply, which would be millions of people reapplying at the same time? Like, that could be really, really terrible. And so in addition to seeking these checks, what Democrats are doing is they're kind of pleading with Trump to sign this bill, which I don't think is going to happen. The other part of it is, as I said, the COVID bill was tied to a spending bill for the rest of the year. Now, right now, we're operating under a continuing resolution, which expires on Monday. So the government would shut down on Monday if Trump doesn't sign this bill. Now, another thing that they could do in this Monday session is pass another continuing resolution just to get through this patch. But would Trump sign that, or would he continue this leverage play? I mean, I don't know what his end game is, but he's certainly, you know, maybe he thinks this makes him more popular, so on January 6th he can take over the government. But it seems like he has a lot of leverage right now because Congress is ending, and they would have to start all over again if Trump decides never to sign this bill. It's called a pocket veto. You know, you can, after, what happens is something can become law without the president signing it after 10 days, not including Sundays for some reason. So after 10 days, it's day rest. After 10 days, something becomes law without the president having to sign it. However, there are less than 10 days in this Congress. So if he just holds on to it for 9 days and pocket vetoes it, and Congress dissolves, it ends because, you know, the next Congress begins, then everything that is not signed or not dealt with, it just sort of goes away, and you have to start over. So that's that. Those are two other things in the mix.
Okay. And does this put a real dent in your writing schedule?
Yeah, this is lit. I mean, with the prospect, we're a good union shop. This was supposed to be our last day, and with the entire office is off from tomorrow until New Year's Day, except me, I guess, because we got to continue to watch this story, and see how it unfolds.
Are you a Christmas tree Jew, or are you like a Chinese food Christmas Jew?
Normally I am, but we have an old dog that started to bump into a lot of things. So we decided to not go with the Christmas tree this year for just that reason.
Right. But I mean,
because she'd set something on fire by knocking it over.
Right. That's not good. Not because she's launching the war on Christmas, I assume. It's just about.
No, she's launching next to nothing. Here she is right now. She sits.
Oh, she's so cute. That's
what she does.
What kind is she? Hi.
She is a fox terrier. She's about 16.
Oh, yeah.
And no, but she's doing all right. We just felt it was better to maybe.
I like her long extended paw.
Yeah.
No, I was just wondering if your family's gonna like kill you, like you can't join.
Oh yeah, no, they don't care.